We'll open up this meeting of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal and informal session for June 11th of 2020. We'll get to July, but not yet. But let's start with a flag salute. Lance, can you lead us?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lance.
Yes, sir.
Move on to item C, which is public comment. And due to COVID-19 and social distancing requirements, we encourage anyone wishing to submit general public comment or comments on agenda items to do so in written format via email at bocinfo@co.yamhill.or.us or by mail at 535 Northeast 5th Street, McMinnville, Oregon 97128. Any comments received prior to the meeting will be shared with the Board of Commissioners and submitted to the record. And I believe that, I apologize, I don't have them all in front of me that came into BOC info, but I believe that we all received comments on item F6.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I know that we typically don't allow public comment for that item until it's up for discussion. So perhaps I have them in front of me. I can read the names during that
Yeah,
time
can you
allotted
do that?
when we get to that place.
That's
if
perfect.
that's
Thank you.
okay.
Does that sound good to you?
Yeah,
Okay, great. I didn't put the list together, but I did get them all. Okay, thank you. So we have no public comment, general public comment today. Move on to item D, which is the consent agenda, and we have none. Move on to item E, which is old business, and we have none. Move on to item F, which is other business. And item F1 is consideration of approval of an intent to award a construction contract to Specialized Pavement Marking Incorporated for the 2020 Highway Striping Services Project in the amount of $214,182.71. And Commissioners, just the one note is that the cover sheet inadvertently says 12 bids, received 12 bids, but it was 2 bids.
So
Yeah. Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, I looked at both bids and both Hines and Specialized Pavement Markings, and based on the bids that were turned in, I'd make a recommendation that we approve the intent to award a construction contract of Specialized Pavement Marking for the 2020 Highway Striping Services Project in the amount of $214,182.71.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner, do you have any other comments?
No, thank you.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F1. Item F2 is consideration of approval of an amendment to the agreement between Yamhill County and the Housing Authority of Yamhill County, which is Board Order 19-106, extending the agreement through April 30th of 2021 to support low-income housing needs by increasing vouchers from 10 to 15 per month. And Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, well, as you know, we've had a relationship with Housing Authority, and through Health and Human Services, we're able to provide 10 fast-track housing vouchers for our HHS clients who needed housing assistance. At this point, they were able to give us another 5. The problem is there's a little hitch in that typically what would happen is that one of these vouchers would put somebody on the list and be able to, as if they were already on it quickly.
Mhm.
Problem is that they were notified, Housing Authority, that there is a shortfall and they can't issue vouchers right now, but they are asking HHS to submit those,
Mhm.
get them on the list, knowing that it'll be a couple of months before somebody could actually receive a voucher. So it's an additional 5, but there is a holdup.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that additional detail.
One comment, this has
Yes.
nothing to do with that, because I definitely approve that, is that when I looked at and I don't know if anybody else have, when I looked at the packet online, all the information regarding that agenda item was very light, you couldn't even read it. I had no problem reading it, but you couldn't see anything online. That's just, so I don't know if it was that light or. If
I
you
kept
look up the
loading it
packet,
just to make sure, but yeah.
After the Public Works one, do you see where it's just kind of almost gray?
I think it's just taking a long time to load, because I think this particular packet, it may be the younger stuff. There's lots and lots of pages with color.
Yes.
Well, I got the whole thing to load, but the information on this just wasn't
Yeah.
viewable.
Eventually, it I've had the same thing, but I think it's eventually come up, but maybe not quite this one. Other parts have been great and come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all there. It's
Yeah.
just kind of-
And I don't know if that was something with the way it was scanned or
Yeah, I don't know.
whatever. But
I didn't have a problem seeing it, but I was looking on my desktop, so it might have been a
Yeah, maybe.
tablet
Okay,
or
well, then it's probably
laptop
just-
thing.
I'll take a look at it.
Anyway, the contract is similar to what we've had. It's just that we added that additional.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was communicating with Lindsay earlier this week. Didn't have a chance to correct it on the agenda, but it's actually not an amendment to the existing agreement. It's essentially a restatement and entering into a new agreement for the next year.
Okay.
So I would ask the board to consider this as an approval of the agreement between the Informal County Housing Authority, April 1st, 2020 through April 30th of 2020.
With-
The previous agreement expired March 31st.
Okay. And that would be a new board order then, right?
No, you haven't voted yet, so I think you can, but yes, this agreement will get.
Yeah, it will get its own board order.
Whatever the next board order is.
Yeah. Okay. Roger, entertain motion.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move approval of item F2, which is consideration of approval of the agreement between Yamhill County and the Housing Authority of Yamhill County Board Order 19-106, extending the agreement from April 1st through April 30th. Is that correct?
Yeah, from April 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2021.
Perfect.
To support low-income housing needs by increasing the vouchers from 10 to 15 per month.
All in favor, signify by saying.
Question.
Oh, yes.
Based on Christian's, are we really approving the extension or are we
It's a
approving?
new agreement. It's effectively the same. It's in the same form it was last
But
year.
it would be a new board
with the
agreement. We're not
changes.
extending this board agreement.
Correct.
Correct.
So it caused the creation of a new board
A new
agreement.
board order.
New board order, new agreement
Mhm.
for the next year.
Great. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. So we're going to show unanimous approval of item F2. Item F3 is consideration of approval for Yamhill County to purchase and enter into an agreement with NeoGov for the utilization of their Insight and onboard platforms. Annual fee in the amount of $24,180.20 and a non-recurring professional services fee in the amount of $9,000. And Ken, would you like to say anything about it, or?
I could, and I can answer questions
Yeah.
about it. I can say that this is a project that actually goes back to when I was in HR at the time, so this is something that we've been looking at, evaluating.
Mhm.
Did budget for it, it's in the approved budget for this year, so we did budget for the numbers for this project. We're just had so many other projects underway, we're finally getting to this, but what this platform is going to do is greatly improve our processes for recruitment, application, and onboarding. And it's going to refine processes within HR. It's going to make sure that we're capturing the correct data and we're managing it much better than the current system that we have, which is very staff intensive.
Okay, great. Any other?
Question, Ken. I'm fairly familiar with NeoGov and I think it's a great package. I think it helps your recruiting, it helps the legality for your recruiting to make sure you're only asking questions you should ask and questions you shouldn't ask. My question is if we get to do this, does NeoGov have the capability when and if or when we put in a financial management system to integrate that applicant information that's hired into that system?
It'll be something that we'll evaluate as we're bringing on, because keeping in mind that typically your finance system, not all finance systems have an HR module that's part of it. So it's going to be something that would come into the evaluation portion of it. Again, we're really concentrating on this one on the recruitment piece. So this is just one part of the overall function of the HR office that it's going to help with those improvements. And once we have this in place, it's going to be something that we'll have as part of the evaluation criteria when we start looking at central finance systems and what HR modules we may be adding to that central finance system on how it corresponds or works with it.
Okay, and
Sure.
one other question, Ken, is as I looked at all the information on NeoGov and went online and looked at it, do you see NeoGov with their training portion that comes with the Insight product? being able to maybe replacing or causing us not to have as many new employee orientation sessions as we have.
No, I still
Think
see,
those
I
would be
don't
the
see
same.
this as a replacement to new employee orientation. I really see this as a tool, and I should expand it. It's not just HR, but it's also at the hiring managers and all the various departments, and as far as the application flow and the recruitment and the process. There could be components for further enhancing or tracking what we're doing for the onboarding process, but just with the number of things that are covered during the new employee orientation, because we have to cover everything from policy and procedure to benefits, to, employee relations and some requirements, for the union having access and things like that. It may help supplement that, but not necessarily replace it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion if Mary doesn't have any comments,
wanna-
or she does.
Mary does have something she wanted to say.
I have a couple of questions.
That's right.
Just a couple of questions. So this is a recurring charge every year of about $24,000,
Correct.
and that's factored in terms of what this will mean going forward for the budget. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the risk management component of this. How do you see this either being an asset for the risk management piece, or at least maybe taking away some of the staff time that's devoted to risk management?
Well, right now, when you look at it,
Good question.
on how we handle applications, how we receive applications, we still receive, a lot of our applications are coming in either via email or they're hand delivered. And so then the risk of when you're still doing basically an older system for how, that's very staff dependent on getting the applications from point A to point B. And we have all these signing sheets and logs that we're doing. Here, this would allow applications come in online, close date, the department, we're now not printing copies, or we don't have all these copies of applications going out. Instead, the manager now access directly the number of applicants that are within that job recruitment. And so then it lessens the likelihood that copies of personal information being out there. It also reduces the chance that an application didn't make it into the mix that could result in some type of a protected class or complaint that comes into that. There's also some screening tools that are built into the system that will be able to allow the managers to screen applications, and then also applying veteran preference points and some of those other areas where right now we have a staff person that reviews the veterans, as an example, gets the application, reviews it. Yes, they submitted their DD-214. They get 5 points preference, and making sure that information is forwarded with the DD-214. It'll be a much improved system in here to help with the risk management aspect of this as well.
And one more question. So looking at that cost on a year-to-year basis, has there been an eye toward, well, what would this cost if we had to add an additional staff person, and how much staff time is this truly going to save?
I think the challenge
Good
is,
question.
it's one that we look at with any software solution. And I think while, once we get in, I don't know if it's necessarily going to say, it's going to refine our staff time and how we handle this process. Not necessarily require less staff to handle the process. I think sometimes we always have to be careful because software solutions, AI is not there yet. But it's just a much improved, it modernizes our recruitment process. And this is something that like I said, I wanted to really do 5 or 6 years ago to get us, caught up a little bit in our processes. Not to say that, I will say that HR has done an excellent job in our current process that we have. It's very
Manual.
it's very manual. There's a lot of paper. This will modernize that a great deal and help out HR. And with how busy our small HR division is, any way that we can make improvements on processes And especially with recruitments, even though that's an area due to COVID-19, we haven't been doing a lot of recruitments. But we're anticipating once we start getting to the other side of the pandemic that we're going to see,
There's going to be
it's going to pick up again.
Okay.
for recruitment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can tell you that when I went onto NeoGov's website and the other two that are similar to NeoGov, and one of the Washington counties, when I looked at their customer base, one of the Washington counties, I think it might have been Lewis County, but I don't know, I can't remember for sure, is that they, number one, is they did, you're just like Ken said, they didn't increase anything, but it diminished their chances for liability, and until they got in and started using it, they didn't have the faintest clue. I mean, they didn't have a real good idea of the additional things it could do that they've turned on and they're doing now. So I think you're right. Anytime you can automate that, it's better off than having people handle it.
Okay.
Thanks for your questions too. I really appreciate them since they were in my mind and I should have asked them.
Thank you.
And we've all seen in our various areas of liaison duties how sometimes slow, I'll just say, the recruitment process can be. So I'm excited about the efficiency of when the county or a department says, all right, we need a person for this role, that we get them into place.
I do know.
I know the epidemiologist, when I was like, oh, I'm so excited. Come on, where's the epidemiologist? So
Yeah,
that
I
was
do
an
know that
example from your area.
Lewis County, I believe it was, they just changed their website. And when somebody applies on like job opportunities,
Mhm.
it takes them right to NeoGov
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
for
nice.
that organization. And then once they do everything, it's all automatic.
Okay, great. That's good to know.
Nice. And everybody in HR right now is going, yay.
Well, they will once they get through the implementation.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Leading up to it, and when you're running two parallel, onboarding the new system and still running the current one, there's some challenges ahead of it.
That's a good
Okay.
point.
Well, in
Okay.
that case, then I will make a recommendation that we approve the purchase and enter an agreement with NeoGov for the utilization of Insight and onboard platforms, annual fee in the amount of $24,180.20 and non-reoccurring professional service fees in the amount of $9,000.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Sure, just
Oh,
one
yes,
comment
please.
if I could. Ken and I were chatting about this morning. There's still some review to be done to the contracts. I asked if the board would to approve this subject to the final review and approval of county council, and I'll work with Ken to make sure this
And I'll add
gets
that
done
to
so they
my,
can go.
I'll add that to my recommendation.
Subject to approval.
Okay.
Great. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F3. Item F4 is consideration of approval of a contract extension between Yamhill County Assessor's Office and Andrea White, DBA Trask Mountain Editing, which is Board Order 19-408 through December 31st, 2020 in the not to exceed amount of $25,000. And I mean, I think
Well,
I
yeah,
understand this, but Commissioner,
Derek and I have talked
Yeah.
about this a couple times, and organizations that do their own internal and document their own internal processes. And I think one of Derek's letters stated it well. They didn't even know what they should have in their internal processes. By doing a firm that specializes in doing these, everything is the same. They all tie in together and tell you truth, writing policy, and which Ken really knows, and making sure procedures are precise and everything is really critical. So I think this, even though we have to go through some budget, I think he said that they would save the charge or require a budget amendment, but they would save the charge to other line items to pay for the cost of this. So Ken, I'll let you, anything you have to say.
all right,
Okay.
Yeah. exactly. I would entertain a motion to approve item F4 then. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of item F for consideration of approval of the contract extension between the Yamhill County Assessor's Office and Andrea White, DBA Trask Mountain Editing.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F4. Item F5 is consideration of declaring tax lot R3218BA003003 a parcel of undeveloped real property acquired by the county through property tax foreclosure as surplus property and authorize the sale of this parcel to KPJ LLC, which is and the address of 920 Sahali Court Southeast, Salem, Oregon 97306 for $3,000 plus fees and costs. And I have questions about this, but I bet there's some answers.
I don't know if this will answer your questions, but I do have some background materials and some information on this lot.
Yeah.
I'm happy to
Just what we were gonna ask for.
more.
And I believe, did we get the comment at BOC info?
Yes.
Or did it come to us just directly?
Uh,
Thank you.
I got it in my email. I think
I
it
just
was
got it in my
directly.
email, but I don't know whether.
Here.
Picture, it's better when it's in color.
It
I'll just
came from-
forward it to you.
came from-
Oh, okay.
It came from David Wall.
Okay,
I'll
fantastic.
forward it.
Thank you.
The lot we're actually talking about is this little sliver. Just a little highlighted.
That looks like a line, doesn't it? Look like a sliver.
There we go. I'll forward it, Carolina. Thank you. I saw it. Noelle gave me the full scoop.
That's good. There was also a note from Carrie in the packet too.
So what I gave you is basically the material that we have in our file on this property. It's a little long, thin sliver of property that appears to have, in all likelihood, been created in error through some sort of a survey mistake over time. Its real market value is less than $15,000, so we followed our normal process in contacting all of the adjoining property owners to gauge any interest in this property. The folks, I guess, on your documents, it would be to the left. Those property owners own some farmland that this strip is actually already essentially incorporated into. I believe it's
Okay.
Clover Orchard. But we asked all the adjoining property owners what interest they had. These owners expressed an interest. And I think there may have been some initial bidding, but eventually the buyer who's before you offered the most for it. So this is actually more than we've gotten in the past for similarly sized slivers. And it's been published in the paper. We've gone through the notice requirements around that. So at this point, we're ready to continue finalizing the sale of this piece to KPJ LLC for $3,000. We will provide them with a quitclaim deed. They'll sign our standard disclosure letter, or disclosure document that contains a laundry list of sort of warnings and disclosures that we provide to any purchaser of this kind of property that the county doesn't warrant the property. It's their responsibility to check the record for any liens. That's why we provide a quitclaim deed. There's no warranty on the deed itself. And so what happens is we'll have the buyer come in, we'll provide them the signed quitclaim deed when we get the signed acknowledgement letter from them. And then we collect the purchase price plus some administrative fees. So I think the total for this will probably be somewhere around $3,200.
So
Okay.
that they ain't gonna build a house on that property.
Well, that's one of the warnings we tell them is, and it's in the deed itself. And that's one of the requirements actually for our ability to sell these properties like this, is that it isn't appropriate for a dwelling. Now, if they buy it and then go through some sort of a lot line adjustment of their own later, working through the planning department to do that, that's a possibility. But as it currently stands, this lot on its own is not anything that it's, likelihood in construction. And we provide all those kinds of disclaimers. That's all information and questions that we would expect the buyer to answer to their own satisfaction.
That answered all my questions.
I know.
Thank
Way to
you.
go.
Commissioner Chair, I think I did this good, even though BOC info didn't get it that as Commissioner. I think we all got it, one letter from David Wall.
Yeah.
Who was questioning the sale of this kind of property at that amount, so. But we'll make sure that it gets to its legal counsel and everything, Carolina.
Carolina has it now.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I just wanted to enter that in the record.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. And thank you for explaining that. Makes a lot more sense to me now too. All right. Well, I would move approval of item F5 then. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F5. That was a good look because, you know.
Yeah, Casey said, well, I asked for it, and who made it?
All right. Moving on to item F6. Consideration of approval of in the matter of rescinding Board Order 20-25 on remand from the Land Use Board of Appeals and reauthorizing the establishment of a contract with Farline Bridge Incorporated for the Yamhillis West Sider Trail Bridge Construction Project. Contract approval to be retroactive to January 16th of 2020. And did you want to read comments or read names to acknowledge?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, we received these and it brought lots of questions to mind for Mr. Sadler and for our planning department. So I just wanted to read the names. This came from John Van Dyke, and he says that this will only end with more litigation if we buy into this. Someone else said, this is from Billy Matthews, who I believe is here. I can't see you because you have a hat and a mask, so I'm assuming that's you. Ms. Matthews, you cannot
And Gordon,
authorize
yeah.
construction because
Right.
we haven't done what LUBA required, so that's going to be one of my questions. The other, and then regarding public notice, that was another of my questions we can ask Mr. Friday. This is from Ben Van Dyke, who's saying that this is a workaround in an attempt to circumvent the process for the remand, and that would be another question. This is from Julie Van Dyke regarding the contract and saying that LUBA clearly ruled against the construction until the land use EFU zone and farm impacts were satisfied. That would be a question I would have. Corey Van Dyke said that he is objecting to the contract with the bridge company. And Tom Hammer says that our attempts are to circumvent land use laws related to the trail. And this is from Greg McCarthy, is concerned about the fact that the public cannot attend. And he would like to say that, would like to have this entered into the record, that LUBA was clear that this was an illegal trail and illegal bridge cannot be proceed before the land use issue has been resolved. This is from Chris Mattson saying, I'm asking you not to renew and extend the building contract, that we failed to meet the requirements LUBA has set. Celine McCarthy says, there is no master plan, so farm impacts have not been satisfied. Alice Partridge said the whole process has been suspect and we're rushing to pick up where we were stopped in our tracks. So those are, and I might have missed printing one out, but those, the bulk of the comments we've
Yeah.
received. So those are pretty much the questions that I have.
Yeah, thank you. And I wrote down as many as I could on there too. So Commissioner, unless you have something, I'd be happy to invite Councilor Sadlow.
No,
Up to answer.
I read all the ones that,
Yeah.
that Commissioner Starrett mentioned. I've read all those.
Okay.
Got the same ones, so.
Great. Thank you. I would invite public in person since BJ, you are here. Ms. Matthews, would you like to say anything into the record? I read your comments, and I think we all did. And there's hand sanitizer if you need it in the back.
I appreciate Mary reading from these comment letters.
Ms. Matthews, can you speak up a bit?
Pardon?
Can you speak up a bit?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sure most of you know us, Gordon and I have quite a bit of, Gordon owns quite a bit of land along the entire railroad grade. I apologize for any spelling errors because I didn't find out about this until 4:30 yesterday afternoon. So far this morning, I've fed the ram, watered him, watered the sheep, let them out, fed the bottle lamb, and delivered 2 tires to Les Schwab. Typical farm morning. I apologize for any spelling errors. This just is not right. bypass LUBA, to ignore LUBA's directive, to ignore land use laws. If you haven't figured out by now, we farmers are not going away. You do this right or don't do it at all. There are compromise positions, but we have been ignored for far too long. And the proponents of this trail have had years to plan this properly and do the proper research, whether it's about farmland or wetland or low-density residential zones or industrial zones. Do it right or don't do it at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. And then Councillor Sadlow, I think that at least Commissioner Starrett and I would love to hear some things from you. I don't want to leave out Commissioner Olson, but they were the questions I had written down to
Thank you.
get answered. Would you like a microphone or?
Sure.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the reason for this is what I have been calling the ships passing in the night board order. And that is because last Thursday, you approved the trail again and adopted extensive findings to allow trail uses in the corridor, including the bridge. The bridge was mentioned 28 times in those findings and in the conditions. And basically, then on Monday, after your decision, LUBA issued its remand of the bridge contract, which was adopted through an administrative process like the one you're using today. And LUBA did not and could not take, could not acknowledge that the county had done what it had done on Thursday because it wasn't presented to them as part of the record of that proceeding. So this, anyway, this at least gives the opponents something to appeal, something more to appeal. And we have the remand, and to the extent that they're claiming that there's no authority to move forward with the bridge, they are claiming that it's not in the remand decision. Their complaint is with the remand decision. They do have 21 days from the date that that was adopted to appeal it, and so they still have that right to do that. And so we're not trying to go behind anybody's back or do anything illegal here. We're just trying to follow a process in what has become a very convoluted process. We're still trying to follow that process and make our way through it. So I'd answer any questions that you have related to this.
Mr. Sadler, nice to see you. I have a few questions. Well, one of them actually for Mr. Friday about notice, because we've gotten some comments in the email saying that it wasn't noticed properly, and I wanted to follow up with Mr. Friday on that. But one of the comments is that this is an illegal contract for a bridge. So if you could address that part of it. And I know you.
I'm advising you that it's not illegal.
Okay.
I mean, there are differences of opinion. And, I don't believe it's illegal.
Okay, another one was that there is no master plan, so no farm impacts have been satisfied. Is that just a whole separate consideration, not the bridge part?
It really has to do with the complaints about the decision that's on appeal, that's not on appeal yet, the decision on remand, the second remand that you adopted. That what we said was that the fence design should come out of the master plan, and that's what was deferred. And we made farm impact findings as to everything else. And so we have 74 pages of findings. A lot of those have to do with farm impacts. The remand was as to a handful of those, and we attempted to answer those in the decision that's now on appeal.
It's not yet on appeal.
Not on appeal, I'm sorry. Not yet
The one that's
appeal.
not yet on
I'm
appeal,
assuming that it.
that
will
is
be.
not on appeal, I guess would be, yeah.
It has not yet.
Okay. Commissioner, do you have follow-ups?
21 days.
I have just a comment to make and then a question for Mr. Friday about
Yeah.
the notice part of that and what we're required to do. So we've seen that this is continuing to be a sort of a point of contention, and we know that if the opposition would like to appeal, they have 21 days, but we also know that this is costing the county time and money to continue this. So I think it goes to the point that this isn't going away, and this is going to be one of those contentious issues that costs us money going forward. And looking at our budget, I don't think we have it. The other thing I wanted to bring up at this point is that a couple of years ago at the hearing that we had at the Civic Center, Mr. Ken Wright had offered to take care of and do maintenance on the trail in perpetuity. And to my knowledge, we still don't have an MOU to that effect. As far as I know, it was one of those things that just never was forthcoming, even though we had asked about it, unless you have heard to the contrary.
I thought we had a sign.
My memory of the last Board of Commissioners meeting before I was sworn in was that Commissioner Primozic was holding something because you had asked him that a couple
Okay.
times, but that's my memory.
Okay,
But
I'll
there are
check into that.
counselors in the room. You may know.
We're certainly not behind in the process of establishing that, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
No, I just want to make sure
Okay.
because it
Not
came to
close
my,
Opening the trail on the corridor.
nevertheless, that would be one of the pieces that, maintenance and all that going forward. So I have no more questions right now.
So along those lines is the I should put my head towards sorry, there's a man behind you. No, not behind you, just so you know, Ken. Would that maintenance of the MOU be for once the trail is operational, or is it
Correct.
pre-operational? That's what it is. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense to me then.
Right. I'll look in to see where that is and see if we have it
And then you had a question for Director Friday.
when he's up to bat.
Okay.
In terms
You-
of the cost and so forth, to me, having a unfinished bridge that you paid $800,000 for is that's the waste of money when you can spend 1.1 and get a completed bridge that can be used for other purposes before it's open for a public trail, or even if it is never opened as a public trail. If we have to pay somebody back, I would prefer to have something to pay them for. It's the way that I've looked at it anyway. But yes, there are ongoing staff costs, I suppose, if you want to parse them out from all the other duties that I perform that are not this trail.
You're doing other things. I said you're doing other things.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the week, where we had our final hearing, and then you were also doing the oral arguments, and I think you were working on something else.
Mhm.
That was a big week of trail-related things for Councilor Sadlow.
But again, working in Mr. Burnish's office, that's the way it works. The things that come up are what you have to deal with. at the
Yeah.
time, and something else is obviously going to come up
Yeah, definitely.
to follow it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I understand your answers to Commissioner Stara helped me understand it too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And then if we could have Director Friday up to answer your question about public notice.
As I understand the board order in front of you, it's to establish a contract for construction of the bridge. And, to go back and kind of go through all of this, the county was putting in a bridge for access to its property and indicated it would not use it for a trail unless it was approved. The trail opponents argued that the bridge was part of the trail and needed land use approval for construction. And I just reread this morning again the LUBA decision, and it stated it was remanding the decision for the county to follow and apply County Zoning Ordinance 402.07 and 1202.02. On May 28th, 2 weeks ago, the county approved the trail, and we did do proper notice for those hearings. And we adopted findings addressing county zoning ordinance 402.07 and 1202.02, which are the 70+ pages of findings. And now I'm reading that the trail opponents are stating the bridge is not part of the trail, but is somehow a standalone entity, which is interesting because that's kind of what we started with when we argued that. So I don't think there's any additional notice that is required for this contract, and we have provided notice for the trail and adopted findings related to the trail. I should note now it's been 2 weeks. They've had to appeal this to the Land Use Board of Appeals. I do anticipate an appeal, but they have not done so in the last 2 weeks. And so we have an approved trail and an approved land use on this property, and proper notice was given for that.
So as far as the notice that typically is given to adjacent property owners, that wouldn't be applicable in this particular contract?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Friday.
Well, commissioners,
No, I think, well, after I listen to Ken, I may have a question.
it was like that, Ken?
No,
I'm
my
sorry,
re-
did you have a question for Director Friday? I
No.
should have asked.
I
Okay.
guess this could be to any director.
Any Ken?
Any
Any
Pick a
Ken in
Ken.
the room? That
I'll
Ken will
take-
leave.
I'll
And
take the Ken on the
Any
left.
Ken will
I'll
do.
take the Ken to our left.
I have sent you emails that really should have gone to the other Ken.
Done that too.
Okay, that's good. Okay, sorry.
My question
Commissioner.
was really more on and Mary brought it up at first, on the publication. And the way I understand from what Mr. Sadler said is this, since is this what we're doing today fall under an administrative function that says we don't have to have, but we don't have to allow public comment because it's administrative function. And I've seen Mr. Sadler shake his head yes.
I think that we have allowed public comment. Do you mean public notice, though?
Public notice.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, that's what I meant, public notice, so.
Yeah.
Since it's administrative.
right. This is a construction project.
Got it.
Thanks, Mr. Sadler, for nodding your head.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And well, based upon what I understand, I'm ready to vote on it as well. And would anybody like to make a motion? All right. Well, I move that we approve item F6. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Let the record show that Commissioners Kudla and Olson voted in the affirmative and Commissioner Sterrett voted in the negative. Phew, I had to look at you to make sure I got that right. Thank you.
You better get that right.
I know. I have not in the past, but we clarified.
Thank you.
Yes. All of the steps I managed to get right, I think. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your both for comments, public comments, and for answers from council and director. Appreciate it. Move on to item F7, which is discussion of submitting a letter to the governor's office in support of equitable distribution of CARES Act relief funds to Oregon counties. And I'm going to call on you, but I wasn't sure if you were the one who put it on.
Correct.
Okay,
Mr.
Commissioner.
Chair. So originally, we talked about this last week, I believe, and thought, we really don't need one. AOC has sent a letter for all the counties, but they have since asked us if we would follow up with an individual letter
Mhm.
to the governor and president of the Senate and speaker of the House and our representatives to ask for support in further discussion about the full share of the money provided by the CARES Act. So I'm just recommending that we send our own letter
Yeah,
and with approval of the board.
that sounds great. Commissioner, I should say, Commissioner Olson,
I'm
and thank you.
Don't embarrass her by thinking I'm her. That's terrible embarrassment.
Okay, I will not.
For me, for
But-
you.
But anyway.
I will.
yes.
Commissioner Sterrett, thank you. Commissioner Olson.
I still, and I'm all for this because I have really doubts on how the proposed that it goes right now, distribution would work. I think the smaller counties, Yamhill County and the coast counties, if this isn't passed, I think some of that money, even though they got the direct distribution, I can't help but feel something will happen at the state level to take some of that additional money and somehow get it into the coffers of Multnomah County and Washington County. So I'm all for this, because this, I think, is really one of the lifelines for the small counties in Oregon. So I'm certainly in favor of it.
Well, we've talked a lot about disparate opportunities and disparate outcomes, and how, you know, we're seeing Lincoln County right now with their spikes at the seafood processing facilities. And I'm realizing that any of our rural counties, any of them, it could happen to them, especially associated with ag processors. And so for me, I want to make sure that they have access to funds for those things that might come up, even if they haven't yet.
Correct.
And I do know that in, you know, when we're on our roundtable calls, we hear from Mayor Cape of Amity a lot about the need to reimburse for their costs going out for water provision to their city residents. So I want to make sure that they are going to have access to funds like that.
Correct. And then we also look at the fact that the e-board has approved the funding for the state to reimburse local government for public expenses. And when you see how much is that the counties are incurring on a monthly basis and have since March,
Yeah.
it's significant money.
Yep. And I appreciate our own, you know, county administrator for keeping track of those. So,
Yes.
and then I assume that we'll add in, I mean, the things that are missing we'll add in our legislators' names.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you. And I would
Bringing it
move
up.
approval of submitting this letter on behalf of the Yamhill County.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show unanimous approval of item F7. And I must say that I'm really appreciating watching the LOC and the AOC working together, both their staff and then with
Special districts.
yeah, and with the special districts, yeah. All right, we will move on to item G, which is public hearings. And item G1 is docket number C-22-19/SDR-35-19 parentheses LW, which I assume means you.
I
Yeah.
assume so.
And then this is an appeal of the planning director's approval of a conditional use and site design review request to operate a farm stand, a flower processing facility, and an on-site bakery as a commercial activity in conjunction with farm use. The applicants are Bram Yoffe and Susan Stoller. The appellants are Thousand Friends of Oregon and Friends of Yamhill County. And I will open up this hearing. And I understand that there is some conversation about continuance, but I want to make sure that we go through our steps too, if that sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So at this point, I would call if there are any needs for commissioners to abstain. Okay, I would like to note that I most likely have a potential conflict of interest since I have grown grain in the past. I've also milled it into flour in the past. So, but that does not preclude me from voting.
I would
Yeah.
like to declare a conflict of interest
Okay.
in that I tasted the bread and I thought it was really very good.
Duly noted. Commissioner?
Twice your conflict of
Okay, that sounds good. So we all have a bit of a stake, and it's been acknowledged in the record. At this point, then, I would like to ask commissioners: do you have any site visits or any ex parte contact, the substance of which you would like to put onto the record?
No.
No.
Okay, neither do I, except for meeting the person in here. But I did foreshadow that we were going to have this hearing when we met him. Like to note. Okay, then we will move on to. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners? Great, then we'll move on to the raise or waive it statement. And Lance, are you going to do that? Read it, or do we have Councilor Sadlow?
Is it possible that you would wait until you actually have the hearing in order to have it raised, if you're going to continue the hearing?
Yes.
That would probably be better because you'll have people who testify here.
Okay, that sounds great. Commissioners, are you in approval of that? That we
Yeah.
wait on
Yes.
it? Then at this point, do you want to bring up the continuance request?
Yes.
Because we do need to vote on that. Well, you all know that there is a request for continuance.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday, we received a notice from a co-statement from the applicant and the appellant requesting that the hearing be continued to July 16th. I think it's to give them time to try to hash out these differences and to come to an agreement that both parties find equitable. The staff supports that. And this is, my understanding is it's an ongoing discussion between both parties. And so
Okay, great. And that would be till July 16th.
July 16th. Yes, sir.
Okay, so what we would need, commissioners, if you have any other thoughts, what I understand is that we would need a motion and a vote, but typically there's a statement involved.
Yeah, it would be a move to continue this document item to July 16th at 10 a.m. in room 32 of the Yamhill County Courthouse.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do you have thoughts?
No, my only thought is, and I'll probably bring it up again, is that it is really nice to see two organizations be able to put something off to work together to try to come up with a solution, and hopefully before the public hearing, they will come up with a solution.
Mhm. Great. Commissioner Stagg, do you have any thoughts? I mean, you don't need to. But
No, thank you.
Okay, that's great. No, I really appreciate reading the record. I was heartened to see cooperation, and then as I moved further through the packet, I was disheartened to see that the cooperation or the talks had broken down. So, yeah.
It feels like we've come full circle. It
Yeah.
seems like, yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Well, I would entertain a motion then, if somebody feels capable of that.
I'll make a motion that we, what was the motion, Ken? That we,
To continue this document item to July 16th
10 a.m.
at 10 a.m. in room 32 of the Yamhill County Courthouse.
Well, then I'll make a motion that we do put this on July 16th at 10 a.m. in room 32 of the courthouse.
Okay, great. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Let the record show we have unanimous approval of the continuance. Well, with that, I will recess this hearing until July 16th at 10 a.m. The thing I forgot to ask was about, is there anybody who's not capable of attending who's here right now, but we're closed. So, all right, thank you for all of your cooperation on this. We move on to item H, which is announcements and commissioners.
I just have a couple I'll bring up. One has to do with, and you've probably heard from others too. I don't know any details, but it's nice to see that Commissioner Springer is at home now recuperating, and which is really a godsend. And I guess he's walking and able to talk a little bit. So that's I think that's a great success story right there.
Okay.
And then my other comment is on COVID testing. As we see up spikes, and I have to remember the positivity rate is what we're really interested in. Even though we've had more cases, and I like it, that the more testing,
Mhm.
but the positivity rate is still the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
You've been close eye on that. Commissioner.
And to follow up on that, Commissioner Olson, I've noted that, as we know, OHA has started including presumptive cases in their positive counts. So I've asked our director, HHS Director Lindsay Manfred, about that, and that is a decision that OHA has done. So I wanted a little caveat out there when we start to look at these numbers. Remember that they're including presumptive cases, which is not to say they won't ultimately be considered positive
Sure.
cases after testing, but these are pre-testing. And so I want us to make sure that we're not taking a look at any kind of skewed numbers, and also that that positive cases don't necessarily mean hospitalizations, and that is the crux of this. So that we're not having the hysteria around, oh my goodness, we have an overwhelmed health care system, which we don't.
I did email back Senator Volquist, explained to him that I thought now including presumptive cases in the actual cases was not a good idea, because I think if they want to show them presumptive and actual, fine, but don't lump them together under cases. So.
Correct.
And I've noted with some people, and this was probably something that you had asked about, and I noted and observed that in our daily updates, which are found on the HHS, County HHS page, that there's a little note about how many of those are presumptive and how many of those are test confirmed. And so I've directed people there, like if you are interested in our counties, you can see them here.
Correct. But OHA is kind of putting them all in the same pot.
Pocket.
Right.
But and also under the category of COVID-19, I had, people, and we're all getting emails from people who are saying, is this allowed? Is that allowed? And we have to sometimes double, triple check with the governor's office because sometimes there's inconsistency and there's a lot of confusion. So we had inquiries about, for instance, basketball camps. So when I contacted Jody at the governor's office, she said, oh, well, that's allowed under youth sports. And I said, are you really, really sure? Because I think that it might not. And she said, no, it is. And then come to find out, she said, yes, it's true. Basketball is not allowed. So our, again, it's they left that off the list of you've got soccer, softball, swimming, table tennis, pickleball, but no basketball. Pickleball's a big deal, apparently. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's what I
realize
hear.
that.
For
And
seniors,
axe throwing.
pickleball.
But basketball was not allowed. So I just, have been vocal about the fact that there are inconsistencies and we're seeing groups of people that are getting together in other parts of our state that are not practicing social distancing, but we can't have our kids do youth basketball, just for the record.
Yes.
I do have one other thing I would comment I'd like to make when you're.
Oh, yeah. And I hope that axe throwing is not a contact sport. So
That's what one would hope.
Yes, they're all aspirational in that way.
True.
Yes. But yes, Commissioner.
Only, one other thing is I sent an email to our county administrator, and I know he's got a lot to do, but I think we've all been besieged with emails on HHS and criminal justice and what. And the main problem is people don't really understand where the funding comes. It's like, as county commissioners, we made the decision what got funded, where most of it's state funding. Now, we don't make the decisions. We make the decisions to accept the funding, but once we receive the funding, it's very specific on what that funding could be used for. And what I'm thinking about is if we, for discussion, and this could be at a later time, that we could just put out some kind of a document that people could say, yeah, here's the revenue sources, and this is what comes out of the general fund, and the rest is restricted, state revenues. Because I think people think that our taxpayer dollars, that we're deciding where a lot of this money goes, and we're not.
But we have that graph. We have that graph that we
Couple
could
of
certainly
pie
put up
charts.
on the
Well, I was gonna say, we need to put that up.
pie chart type of thing.
That's just a pie chart type thing that we should put up.
It is. Yeah.
It is.
And I was
but
thinking
tell
about
you the
that.
truth, hardly anybody looks at the tabloid, unfortunately.
I think those are good thoughts. I'm recalling one of in the discussions. I think it's in the kind of the presentation that you did at budget hearings was like here are the different sources of revenue, right? And one of them is state and federal, and but it's actually beginning fund balances that are the majority of or not the majority, they're the plurality, they're 40% or something in that range. And even the beginning fund balances most of those are restricted.
Mhm.
It just occurred to me. So, I know you're well aware of that, but it's another place where there's restricted amounts.
And also I checked with Jessica Beach, and just to get some clarification. So the way I've been responding to people is that according to her information, when you look at the fact that typically this department has been underfunded for quite a while in terms of outside revenues, that to bring us up to the place where they are fully funded is the issue too. So I think there is a lot of misinformation. So it's good to be able to provide that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, please.
I think the other important clarification is recognizing that the criminal justice team, when you're talking criminal justice, it includes community corrections, district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, it's all of those. And so when you're looking at it and then if you're looking at revenue sources, then you have to kind of take community corrections, because the majority of that, like you were saying, is state grant and aid, except for a small amount
Misdemeanor.
that's for misdemeanor supervision. And then a lot of the general fund monies that go into criminal justice, it's the sheriff's office, the jail, marine patrol, DA's office, support enforcement,
Juvenile.
juvenile, are in those categories. So
Yeah.
So when you get into questions and I've seen some of the comments that are more specific to the sheriff's office, you have to further shrink that down.
Right.
Those categories to look at that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what way, and I agree with you 100%, Ken. In what ways could we shrink that down or make it easy for the general public to understand? And that's it, because it's all on the tabloid, it's all in the budget. But how can we shrink it down to where the average individual can understand?
But we do have those called out separately in graphs and in percentages. And I think what happens is when you get these seminar emails where people are given an email to send to elected officials, it's without the understanding that there's more to the story than what you're being asked to ask. So it's good information for us to have that we can share.
Yeah.
Either that, or
definitely.
maybe we can just post that on our website, just the graph part, not the whole tabloid, but just the graph parts.
Because especially
Sure.
in particular when you're looking at, and it's hard because depending on the issue that's in front of us or the questions that are being posted, sometimes it's challenging to answer every question that's brought forward. But specific to like HHS, if you're just looking at general fund allocation, you also have to take a step back and you have to look at the size of the budget. HHS, yes, has a smaller general fund allocation when compared to the sheriff's office. But if you look at the total budgets between the two, HHS
Much larger.
is our largest department and is a much larger budget based on size, scope, the revenue stream sources and everything that comes in there.
Yeah.
So there's less of a reliance on needing those discretionary revenues for those programs, and Lindsay and her managers and her predecessor, Silas, did an outstanding job for years in being very active on where there's needs in the community and going after grant resources, expanded, other revenue sources, partnerships, and everything to maximize those funds and how much we need.
Yeah.
It's important to note that not every county gives general funds to their Health and Human Services Department. So I think it's worthy of calling out the fact that Yamhill County has done that.
So I don't know what the solution is, but maybe I'll just make a copy of the chart out of the tabloid or electronic tabloid, and when somebody sends an email, I'll just send them the chart.
We have
Right.
that.
Simple.
We have the colored version of that, which is a lot easier than
In
the
the
one in the
budget.
tabloid.
Budget, yeah.
Do we have that digitally?
The only one that I know about is the one that's the full PDF that's 100 and something pages.
Okay. Yeah,
You can
probably.
cut you can cut that out.
Yeah.
We'll just take that one.
Yeah. I just often I feel bad. Like, here you go. Here's this.
It's
100.
overwhelming.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. I mean, I must say that I really appreciate seeing, even though I thought that the seminar email was funny. I'm really glad that people are engaged in the budget and realizing that our county budget is a reflection of our priorities. And in many ways, it's a reflection of, even with programs that you can't see them specifically in the budget, there are many programs that where HHS and criminal justice work together really closely that you actually can't see it in the budget document. And so I've kind of had to go and look at HHS website stuff here and the sheriff's office here in order to pull those together to help explain some of the projects that and programs that the county does currently have in place.
And even with the courts.
Yes.
When you look at what we have with our adult recovery courts and how that's been something that the commissioners have made a priority in terms of funding. And we are the fourth oldest recovery court, drug court in the country.
Right.
So
That's a good thing to call out. Yeah, I appreciate that, because for the public and for others here, And a lot of the emails were about why is criminal justice in the conversations around George Floyd's death. Why is criminal justice getting this much money and HHS is only getting this much money, and they want a shift to happen. And so I think it's important to make it clear what programs there are out there where they're working together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And along those lines, because I was hearing from a lot of people pre these emails that they wanted to understand the budget, but they didn't. I'm going to attempt a Facebook Live event that's just explaining how to read the budget and what it means on Monday, so that if people still have questions and they want to have an educated comment about it, that they can submit those before our June 18th.
Finalization.
Yeah.
Adopting the
Yeah,
budget.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes.
After the 18th is the hearing.
20,
Is a public
Oh, that's right.
hearing.
Yeah.
20
Adoption would be the following.
The following week.
24th or 23rd or something. 24th.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And along those lines, I asked Ken about whether we could also consider the community requests, the community proposals when we do our public hearing next week. So it'll be at least on the agenda, if you can take a look at them. I've had multiple requests from people, but when are you going to address them? And I thought, well, I'll put it on as an agenda topic, and if we don't even want to address them, we can do that.
Are we at the place where numbers wise, we have an idea of whether or not these are even something we could fund? Or is that something we'd need to maybe perhaps do down the road?
I don't know if I have an answer. I think it's,
Yeah.
We have the budget, it's been prepared. We're going to have some further changes that I think we're going to be bringing forward, which are more along the lines of trying to account for some of the CARES Act and additional grants that we've been applying for.
Yeah.
To make sure that we have appropriation authority built into the budget should we receive funds. We did, as part of the budget committee process, move additional funds into expenditure lines to make sure that we have appropriation authority.
Yeah.
That should, depending on the process, if you wanted to consider it in the hearing or if you wanted to consider the request during the budget year, you would also have that option as well. The process for those types of requests, while I understand that there's folks that are going to want decisions on where they stand with their proposal that they brought forward, but recognizing, I think one of the things that we did with the budget committee, and I remember, I want to say it was in landfill license reserve or OMC, that we moved actual funds out of reserve for the future into expenditure lines to make sure that if the board wanted to wait and see how things are proceeding through the pandemic and what those impacts may look like, that you still had some expenditure authority during the budget year that you could have considered and approved projects that, during the budget year.
Right.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. So the only other thing that I'll mention, and I mentioned this when we were chatting before the meeting, but is that SEGCOR organized an ag webinar to explain to Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County farm businesses and organizations how to access the $30 million in farm worker housing assistance and PPE provision and money that's associated with helping with spreading out transit and transportation. And I thought it was great. Commissioner Pope, Commissioner Cameron, and I all did very brief kind of context setting. There were about 150 attendees with lots of really good questions. And it was, folks like Jeff Stone at Oregon Associated Nurseries and Rena Lopez from Picayune, the Farm Workers Union. So some really good information. They showed on their the Zoom call, like, here's the form to fill out and here's the boxes that you check. And if you check this box, that means this. So I felt like I actually, declaring a potential conflict of interest, as it were, our farm doesn't need to apply for those things, but I felt like if I needed to, I would be prepared based upon how they presented it. So that was really nice to see. You know, they're going to be helping, the state has set aside funds to help with renting and servicing porta potties on trailers, for example.
Question
Yeah.
that we never got an answer to, and that is about being able to access off-site housing. And there was basically because of the inequity of not having all farm workers have the same access to, for instance, hotels. What's the workaround there?
So all they had on the call was that they talked about how farmers can access, they can request money from the state for hoteling and moteling. There was no mention of this doesn't meet some kind of standard about equity in housing. So they made it very clear that there was money available specifically for housing. You had to still find it, but for motels and hotels.
So that somebody could access that specifically for that category.
Yes. Yeah. And it was for some people, it was either if you need to expand your housing, or expand your footprint, as it were,
Right.
Or if you have a worker who needs to isolate because of a potential exposure.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was laid out as you can do this, and we will reimburse you once you show us that you are doing it. And at least being familiar with both the OLCC and the ODA's organic certification, the forms and the kind of follow-up was a lot simpler, which I was really glad. Because in my head, if it's hard to follow up, or if the forms are hard, they take time, farmers aren't going to do them.
Yeah.
Even when they need the money for it.
Sure.
So I was really pleased to see that they were simpler than I had worried.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And so that SEDCOR Ag Webinar is available now as like a file. They have links to it. They're on the SEDCOR webpage, but I probably have an email link to it that I can forward to you, because it was very helpful, especially for the larger,
I got them.
Okay, great. The nurseries around here are the places that are most impacted by it right now, just because they have so many employees in one space.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was really good to be involved in. Any other comments or announcements? Oh,
I had
yeah.
contacted the state about having a conversation regarding OLCC and the way they're choosing to enforce locally. So in our 3-county area, I want to make sure that our businesses are not having any kind of punitive response from OLCC in terms of their being able to comply with the COVID restrictions.
Mhm.
So I'll be having that conversation next week.
Great.
Tough one. Let's say last week when I said that OLCC, you have to do the expansion permit, but it doesn't do you any good when you turn in and it's taken 3 to 5 weeks to get your expansion permit back. So I don't agree with that whatsoever. It's supposed to be a streamlined process.
For what it's worth, my understanding of that was that you submit it and then you're good to go, but maybe.
They have to approve it.
Okay.
I'll find out more.
I know, that's I was like, hey, wait a minute, there's somebody who's going to tell us.
I'll find out
Okay,
more.
please report back.
I will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just throw out a reminder
Yeah.
that we had an executive session scheduled
Yeah.
immediately after the session, so just in case.
I was going to do that as I gavel out, a reminder, but thank you. Christian, do you have anything?
Congratulations to Ireland, Kuzma, and Bayern for getting something to do before that final. To be held on Independence Day, July 4th, something else for you to look forward to.
And that was that about basketball. We better check this out.
It's
The
amazing when
soccer's
it's the
allowed.
only thing happening. It's exciting.
But the other thing I would say is, reminder, we have 2 more sessions before the end of June. Your current emergency declaration is set to expire
Mhm.
at the end of June. So we should probably think about either next week or the following week's
Mhm.
agenda if you're interested in extending that.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Ken Friday also has something.
Yes, I don't usually share something like this, but since we're talking about basketball, this morning I was able to watch my oldest son, Isaac, graduate from Army helicopter repair school, and
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
honor graduates, was 4th in his class. class. And Army Specialist Friday is going to be going to Fort Wainwright, and Alaskan. He's excited about that because he loves the outdoors.
Wow,
Yes,
congratulations. That's very
congratulations.
impressive. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Job well done.
I'll just add that my son found as well.
At this point, I feel compelled to go around the room.
Not to be outdone.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, with that, thank you, everybody. And I will close this meeting, the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners.
So can we take a, like a
Yeah,
2-minute?
let's do it.